Angie Pieniazek, sitting here with Mike Schubert, the host and creator of Potterless podcast. Hi Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm well, how are you?
I'm great also. So you created Potterless podcast. Can you tell us a little bit, for those who don't know, kind of what this podcast is about?
Sure. So I never read the Harry Potter books as a kid. So the podcast is me going through them for the first time as an adult. And I always have a different guest coming in, just covering a couple chapters at a time. And it was just me going through the series. I started off very snarky. Like I was like, oh, I'll be an adult and I'll make fun of these books because I'll be too critical. And then like halfway through book 3, I was like, oh my God, I love these. So you also get to see me go from being like a curmudgeon into a fan, and then I made my way through the books and the movies and all the other sorts of spin-off stuff. And yeah, the show has now stopped, but I'm still doing things like live shows and all that, but I've progressed on to covering Percy Jackson in a new podcast.
That's so cool. So what was the idea behind creating Potterless?
Sure, I had made a very niche podcast about the app Vine, pre-TikTok, and I did it for about a year or so, where I was talking about just how I made friends from Vine in an unconventional way. And it was fun, but I wanted a podcast that had a subject matter that a lot of people could get behind. So the first thing I thought of was, I was like, oh, a lot of people have read Harry Potter. And then I thought, but I haven't. And then I realized, wait a second, that's the whole podcast. And I kind of sat on that idea until I met my now wife, Kelly, and she offhandedly mentioned that she liked Harry Potter. And I was like, ooh, an excuse to keep talking to her. So then I got off my butt and actually made the show. And here we are.
But yeah, so you mentioned engineering. So as most of your fans know, you were an engineer before you became this full-time podcaster. So how was the transition going from kind of like a stable, just kind of straightforward job to this kind of creative podcasting experience?
Sure. So I went into college knowing that I was going to major in engineering, get a secure job, and then try to do fun stuff on the side. And I had made YouTube videos and I'd done improv and stand-up, and I was just hoping that hopefully something would stick and I would have enough of a financial backing to make a leap. And eventually, when I was working as an engineer in Seattle, Potterless became very popular, and then I realized it was feasible to do this, but even then I'm a very cautious, risk-averse person at times. So I took a job in podcasting where I was doing podcast advertising, helping companies find shows that make sense for their audience, and then I ended up going to doing that part-time, and then the other shows I was working on, it was so much work, and they were thankfully getting so popular that I ended up just saying, okay, I'm going to do this full time. And I remember I had a big call with my parents where I was like, look, here's the financial numbers, and this is why it works, I promise. And it ended up working out well, because when all of the world happened, I probably would have been let go for my engineering job because I was pretty low on the rung. Whereas now that I'm self-employed, like I'm not going to fire myself. I think I'm doing a great job, so I have pretty good job security there. So it's, in a very weird way, it has worked out, and I'm very fortunate to continue to create full-time.
Yeah, I think finding something with such a big fandom, that's kind of a very fortunate experience. You have a very good base to go off of. Yeah, so what were some challenges that you faced when starting the podcast? Because it's a very niche business. I feel like it's starting to grow though. So what kind of challenges did you face?
I think it was just like a lot of learning. A lot of it was self-taught, and a lot of it also was just making friends who are also making podcasts and then learning from them, and just figuring out, from the business side, but then there's also the recording side, and then there's the editing side. I think a lot of people have the misconception, and thankfully, as you said, with podcasting growing, people realize it's not just like recording and hitting upload. There's a lot else that goes into it, and it was just a lot of either learning it by myself or having other friends who make podcasts teaching me it. So I think that was just the hardest thing, is that I had some background in like making videos, so it was similar in some of the like editing tools are kind of the same, but I didn't go to school for it. I didn't have classes in it. So I think it was just it was a lot of like learning the hard way. And sometimes that learning was, I made this big mistake, oops, but now I will never make it again.
Right. So that's kind of all the time we have for today. So thank you so much for coming on this show. It was very exciting to have you. And that's all we have for this interview.
Thanks for having me.